in the summer.
And so it's important for fish, it's important for municipal water supply, power generation, and the farmers.
Climate scientists say most of the snowpack in the Northwest will be gone in just a few decades.
A little bit of warming makes a big difference.
And with all the shootings and other crime happening in Southeast Portland, we are giving you a chance to sound off. And you have a lot to say.
It's pretty dangerous.
I could sit on the couch at night and hear the gunshots up on Division.
I live around 131st and Powell, and yes, I hear gunshots every couple of days.
Here's the story. I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. All the ways to communicate with us right there at the bottom of your screen. You can email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com. You can also use the hashtag TheStoryKGW on Twitter or leave us a good old-fashioned voicemail. Just call our phone number, 503-226-5090. We're going to start with a continued focus on outer Southeast Portland tonight because things are frankly bad there. Not to worry, we do have lots of other interesting news tonight, but we are intent on keeping the pressure on Portland city leaders to fix things in the outer Southeast by making sure that everybody knows what's happening there. Let's take a look. First, police arrested a 15-year-old boy and seized a gun after a shooting Friday night near Southeast 119th and Southeast Oak Street. A 15-year-old. Police say a car was shot up and a black SUV spotted driving away. Police with the FIT team later stopped the SUV, which was stolen. It had two people inside. They ran. They caught the 15-year-old who was booked on outstanding warrants. They're still looking for the other person. Also Friday night, East Precinct Police arrested a 22-year-old after a chase of a stolen car at Southeast 112th and Division. Police say when they made the arrest, they found 2 loaded handguns, 9 knives, and a hatchet. Also Friday night, just before 7 p.m., a man died when he was hit and killed by a car at 114th and Southeast Foster Road. The death happened here near an industrial park on Southeast Foster. I wanted to see the location for myself. It has sidewalks and some street lights, but also a ton of traffic across 5 lanes and few safe places for someone to cross. I also happened to meet Brian Hale, said he was here Friday.
Just pulling in here, and I got here about 2 minutes after it happened, but he apparently walked out in the road right here and he got hit by one car and the person took off.
Police say the man who died was 41-year-old Cedar Markey Towler. The Oregonian newspaper reports he was a husband and a father to a 1.5-year-old. Brian Hale's not exactly sure what happened out here, but a violent death like that affects everyone.
Kind of bothers me. I looked in his eyes when he was laying there right before apparently he died.
Just awful for everyone involved. Mr. Markey Towler's death is the 13th traffic-related death so far this year in our city. The year is barely 8 weeks old. So more than one person per week has died because of a crash or a pedestrian hit and killed. You may not be able to tell, but the city actually does have something called Vision Zero, which is an effort to eliminate all traffic-related deaths in Portland. It's an admirable goal, but clearly out of reach at the moment. The city says it's working to improve lighting and sidewalks and pedestrian crossings. Good. But in my opinion, city leaders need an attitude change when it comes to these sorts of deaths. I asked the media spokesperson for Portland's Transportation Bureau if the director or the leaders, anybody in the Bureau went to the scene Friday night or later Saturday. They tried to pivot and did not answer the question, which means no. I think if you really care about reducing the number of traffic deaths, you should go to the scene. It's the same idea as demanding the mayor and police chief go to the scene of shooting deaths. It tells the public this is outrageous and not normal and will not be tolerated. A lack of presence just telegraphs the opposite. It's time to get past business as usual everywhere in this city, but especially in hard-hit Southeast Portland. That's my take. What do you think? Remember, we are a different sort of news show. We do want to hear your input. Please send an email to thestory@kgw.com or leave us an old-fashioned voicemail, 503-226-5090. Lots and lots of you did last week and over the weekend. Here's a couple we got recently from people who live in Southeast.
I hear gunshots every couple of days. Fortunately, it didn't happen directly to me, but yeah, it is scary.
I could sit on the couch at night and hear the gunshots up on Division, but My concern is I actually have scoped out places in my house where I know that if someone shot at my house, I would be safe, that it would not hit me.
Breaks my heart that people have to do things like that. Let's turn, though, to our big story now. All this week, we're taking a look at the long-term effects of climate change in the Pacific Northwest with some help from our sister station in Seattle. Tonight, we're going to focus on our snowpack. Much of the water that we use to grow our food and the water that comes out of our faucets was once snow in the mountains, but it is slowly now disappearing. In Washington, most of it's expected to be gone in just 20 years. Here's Glenn Farley.
As snow piles up through another decent winter,
Go ahead and put these on.
Scott Petit dons his snowshoes.
I haven't worn these things for a year, better.
He works for a federal agency that measures snow, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And at a snow measuring site across Highway 2 from the Stevens Pass ski area, he's showing us how those measurements are taken by hand. But no, for the most part, snow measurement is mostly automated these days. The slots in the tube show the snow depth.
Looks like about 78 inches of snow. Oh, there it is.
It's also how much that sample weighs.
What these numbers mean is that tells us exactly how much water content is in this snow tube, which is how much water you're going to have if you melted the snow right now and it ran off into the rivers and streams.
I've been going out on these surveys with Scott for years, usually around the 1st of April when the snowpack is at its peak. This was 2011.
114.
He's been at this for decades.
And so working for the agency, I was able to kind of work my way into it, learn the hydrology side of it. And, you know, I've been doing it for 30 years now.
NRCS, part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, everybody said, okay, this is for farmers, but this isn't just for farmers.
Absolutely not. It's for everybody that relies on water. 70 to 80% of our surface water here in Washington comes from mountain snowpack and runoff. And so it's important for fish, it's important for municipal water supply, power generation, and the farmers.
We have the biggest quantity of quote-unquote warm snow. So we got a lot of water, you know, it's the Northwest, right? And a lot of that water is stored in snow at temperatures close to the freezing point. So a little bit of warming makes a big difference.
Guillaume Mauger is a climate scientist at the University of Washington's Climate Impacts Group. We spoke along the Ship Canal on campus. I was the one overdressed. It's in the 50s.
I thought it was going to be cold, but
It's February 9th.
I know. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
It shouldn't be this warm. Is this climate change that we're existing, or is this a freak day?
I mean, it's always the hard question, isn't it? I mean, it's probably, I think the answer is yes, as always, right? It's both.
In this graphic, the Climate Impacts Group shows our historic pattern: snow in blue, rain in green, and a mix of both in red. 2 decades from now, it's expected to look like this: less snow, more mix. In 60 years, rain rules.
One of the ways that we talk about is we talk about whether or not we're in a system that's rain dominant or snow dominant, right? And that just means, do you get a lot of water stored in your snowpack in winter or very little at all? And the projections you're talking about show that most of the state goes to being rain dominant by the end of the century. So meaning there's very little effect of snowpack on the kinds of things we care about.
Is this a view of our future? This was the same snow site I just took you to back in April of 2015, when snow should have been at its peak. There was less than 20 inches. That 2014-2015 winter was a record low.
We have never measured this low amount of snow since we've been measuring snow.
Snowpack isn't just about how deep the snow gets. It's about how much area it covers. And as the world warms, there will be snow, but it will be concentrated at higher elevations where there's less real estate. There's a lot of anxiety that some February we're going to come up here and there's not going to be much to look at.
And that can happen, just like 2015. But at this point in time, in the climatology that we have, those are anomalous years.
Right.
So they're out there, okay? So you can't really look at a year like this and positively say, this is going to be the future. Maybe it will be. Maybe things will turn around. We don't know yet, that for sure.
In 1999, it was a record high.
I've seen 20 feet of snow up here, which is the height of that tower there. And years ago, I think that was in that 1998, 1999 record-setting year, that I measured 20 feet of snow up here. That's the last time that I've done that. And again, that was an anomaly.
Actually, with snowpack, really what we've seen already is really significant.
Petit says things started to shift in the 70s. He's not convinced we're going to run out of snow, but low years are coming closer together.
You know, you look at the next couple of decades, we're seeing acceleration. It's going to continue through this century.
Petit is not a climatologist, but he's aware of the risks.
And I think it's a question that society as a whole is going to have to work together to help solve, whether it means building more reservoirs or groundwater recharge systems like they are starting to do around the state in places. And, you know, things like that, we have to have a conscientious effort to doing that.
In our next story, you can see that work in progress as a multi-billion-dollar plan comes together to hang on to the water we expect to get when nature can no longer store it as snow.
That was Glenn Farley reporting. Let's bring in Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino now. Matt, I'm guessing winter days like today when it's rainy and kind of warm, not great for the snowpack?
Yeah, I mean, that's what logic would dictate. And if it's low elevation snowpack we're talking about, then yes, that's true. It will melt the low elevation snowpack. But if we're talking about a snowpack that's 5-10 feet deep, like we have up in the Cascades right now, that can actually hold the water and save it and sequester it. It just becomes more dense snow, and it holds onto it for a while. It solidifies the snowpack, makes it very stable. So it's kind of a yes-no answer. Low elevation, yeah, it melts it. The upper elevations can hold it. It's 37 degrees up at Timberline right now, and there's been a lot of rain, like over 1.5 inches of rain up there. But we may not lose all that water. I want to talk about the snowpack and what we've done couple times this winter, a couple of data points here for you. January 1st, after a really dry start to the snowpack through really mid-December, it just came on like gangbusters. We were 132% of average at Timberline, 128 at Meadows, up in Washington, similar above average snowpack. Now, if you look at February 15th, and we'll get an update tomorrow on the first of the month for what our snowpack is, but it really dropped off. 88% of average, 83% of average, and in Washington, 73 to 77% of average. Not terrible, but not exactly what we want to see. So the point here is we see these fluctuations not only within a year, but year to year. And, you know, they made a couple of very solid points in that Glenn Farley story about how that year of 98, 99, we had that record snowpack on Mount Baker, over 1,000 inches over the course of the season. It's still the record for North American snowpack in a single season. And then 2015, really low. That wasn't a straight line down. There's lots of variations. Some years are up, some years are down. Some years like this, a La Nina year, we get ups and downs, as I'm showing you here, within the season itself. We're beginning to come out of that, though. Look at from December 15th, and I'm going to go back to the early part of winter and make my point about how we picked up so much. December 15th, we were 66% of average, for example, at Timberline. By January 15th, look at that. We went from 40 inches to 107 inches in a month. That's what the Cascades can do when the pattern changes. And in a La Nina year like this, we expect to see a lot of changes, and we have. Remember, last week, we were seeing temperatures in the teens in the valleys, and we had snow. Now it's 60 degrees. Now, what's happening now is something called an atmospheric river. You may have heard this term. I talk about it. We talk about it in the news, and it brings a lot of rain and warm weather to the West Coast. We used to just call these pineapple expresses, but we've got better science on them now. And they're really interesting because what it is a narrow, fairly narrow, usually band of low elevation, really moisture-rich content air that slams into the West Coast from the tropics. And we get these incredible rainfall days like we did today, 5-6 inches of rain in the Coast Range and the Cascades. These are important because in California, about half, at least half of the rainfall comes from atmospheric rivers. Here in Oregon, probably 30 to 50% of our annual rainfall comes from atmospheric rivers like what we're experiencing today. So they are very, very important, even though they bring warm weather and they melt some snow. They bring a lot of water to the West Coast. Now, our current one will last another day or so and then fizzle out and move on down to the south. And we will go back, Pat, to cold weather again and low snow levels towards the end of next week. So this winter, we've seen lots of variations. We haven't seen a lot of valley snow, a little bit, you know, back after Christmas before New Year's. But we've seen these tremendous changes in the snowpack, while a little bit below average right now. Still a lot of time to make that up.
Wow. Super interesting as always. Thank you, Matt.
You
Appreciate
bet.
it. It's probably the most contentious issue of Oregon's legislative session. Should farm workers get paid overtime? The union, as you can imagine, says yes.
We also fear that people are going to choose to go to Washington or not come back, especially our migrant farm workers.
But farmers, on the other hand, say no. What would it do to your profit margins?
It's definitely going to hurt them.
We'll dive deeper into the arguments behind both when the story continues. Welcome back. If you're new to our show, thanks for being here. We're a news show for people who've given up on local news but still care deeply about local issues. So do we. Everybody's welcome. Keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com or give us a call, leave us a voicemail at 503-226-5090. Oregon lawmakers are struggling with the question of whether to pay farm workers time and a half for working more than 40 hours in a week, which is pretty much what every hourly person in America gets. And full disclosure, I'm a union member here at KGW. I get time and a half, but farm workers in Oregon do not. So it's obvious that they should, right? Well, as I dug into this, it turns out the issue is not quite as obvious as I thought. Farm workers in Oregon and many other states do not get paid overtime because of federal law passed way back in 1938 called the Fair Labor Standards Act. It excluded farm workers from overtime. Washington State and California have recently passed state laws to change that and to include farm workers in groups who do now get overtime. And now Oregon is moving towards that too. Representative Andrea Salinas, a chief sponsor of the bill, said it is time for a change.
And like I said, I don't blame anybody today for setting that system up, but I do take responsibility for changing a system that was rooted in racism.
I guessed that most farmers would probably be against the change, but wanted to understand why. That led me to Annie Kramer Steinkamp, a third-generation blueberry farmer in the Willamette Valley. She's in charge of 4 different farms with a total of about 600 acres of blueberries. She said she feels like her workers are family, that many return year after year and already make a good hourly wage.
My hand crews get paid by the pound. Right now, on average, my average pickers are making $20 to $22 per hour. My top guys are making $35 to $45. And then you add time and a half on top of that, you're talking over $30 for the average picker. And for the top pickers, that's $50 to $60.
She said that would push her farm from a slim profit to losing money. Let's drill down now so you can get a feel for the income and the outgo that farmers like Annie are dealing with and why this overtime bill makes them nervous. On Annie's farm, she told me, the cost to grow a pound of blueberries is around 50 to 60 cents. The cost to pick, pack, and ship that pound is about $1. Annie sells the berries to a wholesaler and gets on average $2 a pound. That leaves her 40 cents a pound. So if it starts at $2 and then it goes, now we've got 40 cents left, where's that 40 cents go? Is that just go into your bank account or does that have to pay for others?
No, it's going to helping maintain these blueberries, equipment, bonuses, health insurance, retirement, getting ready for the next season.
She said over the last decade her farms have mostly not lost money but not made much either.
It's been more break even than money in our pockets.
And how can you stay in business if you're always just right on the edge?
That's been the stressful part.
Annie said if the bill passes, she will likely start to harvest using a machine. It takes 5 people to run instead of the 150 who now pick blueberries. I know you love the family feel and the people, but I mean, is it a harsh reality that maybe that's where you should be going as the mechanical picker?
It's not what I want, but it's probably going to be the realistic of it. I mean, I've already talked to some people up in Washington that they're going 100% machine picked.
I also wanted to spend time in the field with farm workers and talk with them the same way I talked with Annie in her field. But over the course of a week and a half, the Farm Workers Union was not able to help us coordinate any interviews that way. So we are using what they offered, which was a Zoom interview with the union's president. She told us the legislation now making its way through Oregon is a gradual change that will help workers and that there are also provisions to help farmers adapt.
It would basically create a 5-year phase-in of farm worker overtime, eventually getting to 40 hours of overtime compensation by the 5th year. It also includes a tax credit that small and mid-sized growers could use too to help them through the transition.
And she says it's the right thing to do.
And not only a matter of equity and dignity and respect, but if we don't implement something, we also fear that people are going to choose to go to Washington or not come back, especially our migrant farm workers who are already saying, hey, I get paid overtime in this other state, and I'm questioning whether I'm going to come back again next year.
Still ahead, we're going to have some fun and educate ourselves. Take a look at these 2 press releases. They seem to be about completely different topics. Guess what? They're actually about the very same thing. We're going to talk about politicians and how they like to spin things when the story continues. Tomorrow night, President Biden will present our State of the Union, and we will not have a show because it airs at the same time, and you should watch that instead of us. To prepare for tomorrow, though, I want to talk about spin. That's the instinct of politicians to get you to focus on what they want, their version of reality. For example, 2 press releases we got into the KGW newsroom today, they're just perfect. They arrived, no kidding, within seconds of each other, and they both focus on the exact same topic. But they came from 2 opposing organizations, so check it out. This one from the office of the Oregon Senate Republicans. The headline reads, Democrats pass bill to help convicted felons stay in the country illegally. Just 1 minute later, we got a press release from the Oregon Senate Democrats. Their headline, Oregon Senate Democrats pass universal legal representation. Now, both these releases have to do with Senate Bill 1543. That's a bill in the Oregon legislature right now that would expand access to immigration legal services. But as you can see, the Democrats and the Republicans each spin it their own way. It's a super common thing. Tomorrow night, watch President Biden. Pay attention to the way he spins things. He's likely going to focus your attention on all his administration is doing to fight climate change. Part of his spin that things are really looking a lot better with him and his team running the country. And then afterwards, the Republicans will respond and spin their version. They're going to tell you that the president's approval rating is at a historic low or somewhere close to it. Definitely super duper low. That's part of their spin that nobody likes what's happening. Let's take a look at a few more examples. The first is from last month when a Portland police training presentation included a right-wing meme that endorsed violence against protesters. Mayor Ted Wheeler spoke out against it, but he carefully spun his message so as not to anger the police bureau. Listen.
I believe that the hardworking members of the Portland Police Bureau who are seeing this for the first time are also angered and disgusted by the image and words on this slide and how it portrays members of our community and law enforcement.
Pretty good spin. You can hear how the mayor carefully defended the police bureau, saying they're hardworking and seeing this for the first time. Here's another example from City Commissioner Dan Ryan when we asked why he keeps missing his own deadlines to build these safe rest villages for the homeless.
Couldn't this be moving faster? Like, we have an emergency. Couldn't this be going faster? What would you say to that just generally?
Well, you have total alignment with the entire city council, with the county commissioners as partners, and we have a great team in place all within 2 months. And I think that they will be hopefully remain supportive and helpful as we do some really tough work to get these up and running by the end of the calendar year.
Super good spin. And one more from Senator Ron Wyden after our producer asked him about the status of student loan cancellation.
First, the good news. I requested, and others did, that the Department of Education suspend administrative wage garnishment of student loan borrowers. That was announced today, Ashley, and that is very good news. That was announced by the Biden administration, and these penalties would have just clobbered people. It could have even taken their Social Security payments. So that's good news.
Yes, definitely good news. In each case, they want to make sure their messaging sticks to the good news and glosses over or pivots away from the not so good news, sometimes ignoring it altogether. See what you can spot while you watch the State of the Union tomorrow and the response. Should be pretty fun. All right, keep sending your questions and comments to the story at kgw.com. Coming up, we're going to show you how you can help in our local community. Portland when it comes to homeless crisis, but small towns across the state are dealing with similar issues. That's why this week's Hey Help campaign is highlighting the Forest Grove Foundation. The group aims to help distribute food, supplies, and clothes to homeless individuals around western Washington County. If you want to help, and we hope you do, just scan the QR code on your screen right now or go to kgw.com/heyhelp. This is a micro donation drive, so you can send as little as a few bucks or more if you'd like. That's the end of our show. Thanks for watching, but remember the story, our story, that never ends. See you Wednesday.
This